Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit tre.radio.
The TRE Bookshow is sponsored by audible.co.uk. Download one title each month, plus unlimited listening to thousands of Audible originals, podcasts and audiobooks. Just click on the Audible banner at www.tre.radio.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Good evening and Happy New Year. Welcome to tonight's book show, the first one of 2026. We will start by looking at the bestseller lists on amazon.co.uk and the Sunday Times. There's just one new entry this week. Then we'll be chatting to Cara Finegan, a Northern Irish LGBTQ writer whose career as a primary school teacher has spanned 25 years. She has a degree in English and drama and is in the process of writing her 6th novel. Don't Call Me Baby was shortlisted for the Novel London Prize 2023. It's a gripping psychological thriller about a respectable family woman who shows her dark side. Also chatting to Lisa K Friedman, who's an award-winning essayist, author and educator who teaches creative writing at American University and mentors writers in the art of fiction. In her latest novel, Hello Wife, she explores the devastating impact of opioid abuse on the families of those who are addicted. And we're joined by Mark Batey, who worked as Chief Executive of the Film Distributors Association before retiring to write. Josephine Butler's Great Crusade and The Secret Life of Father Time are the last two of his trilogy of remarkable life story books. They focus on the unsung heroes of the Victorian northeast of England who were born in the early 19th century and went on to become national heroes of Victorian Britain. Just the first hour. In the second hour, we're chatting to Melanie Blake, Robbie Steenhouse and Charles Harris.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's book show. We will start by looking at the Sunday Times bestseller list, the oldest and most influential book sales chart in the UK. This is the one that every author wants to be on. It's the most accurate and comprehensive estimation of book sales in the country. So last year's Christmas number one was Charlie Mackesie's Always Remember, the follow-up to his wildly successful The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. Richard Osman's The Impossible Fortune came second. Starting with the general hardbacks, no new entries this week. At number one, Always Remember by Charlie Mackesie. Number two is Diddley Squat, The Farmer's Dog by Jeremy Clarkson. Number three, When Gavin Met Stacey and Everything in Between by Ruth Jones and James Corden. Number four is A Mind of My Own by Kathy Burke. Number 5, Last Rites by Ozzy Osbourne and Chris Ayres. Number 6 is The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. Number 7, This Way Up by Map Men. Number 8 is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse, the original one by Charlie Mackesie. Number 9 is Peter Kay's Diary by Peter Kay. And number 10 is Mr. Willman's Motoring Adventure by Andy Willman. Fiction hardbacks, there is one new entry. At number 1, The Impossible Fortune by Richard Osman. Number 2 is Exit Strategy by Lee Child and Andrew Child. Number 3 is The Secret of Secrets by Dan Brown. Number 4, The Long Shoe by Bob Mortimer. Number 5 is Flesh by David Slale. Number 6, Dawn of the Firebird by Sarah Mughal-Rana. Number 7 is The Rose Field by Philip Pullman. Number 8, The Names by Florence Knapp. Number 9 is that new entry called We Who Will Die by Stacia Stark. A woman makes a magically binding vow to kill an ancient vampire emperor. And number 10 is The Artist by Lucy Steeds. Looking at Amazon.co.uk, the bestsellers for this week, at number 1 is The Housemaid by Freda McFadden. Number 2 is The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. Number 3, The Housemaid's Secret by Freda McFadden. Number 4, The Good, the Bad and the Healthy, How to Make Smarter Daily Choices by Suna van Kampen, who was a guest on my afternoon show this week. Number 5, The Housemaid is Watching by Freda McFadden. Number 6, The Almanac, A Seasonal Guide to 2026 by Leah Leendurst. Number 7, Cozy Corner by Coco Wyo. Number 8, What's Your Dream by Simon Squibb. Number 9, Always Remember, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, the Horse and the Storm by Charlie Mackesy. And number 10, The Anti-Inflammatory 30-Day Reset by Sophie Richards. Can tell it's the new year.
The Book Programme. Presented by Hannah Murray.
You're listening to the Book Club on Talk Radio Europe. And keep listening. That's an instruction from Margaret Thatcher.
Joining us on the line now is Cara Finegan. She's a Northern Irish LGBTQ writer whose career as a primary school teacher has spanned 25 years. She has a degree in English and drama and is in the process of writing her 6th novel. Her novel, Don't Call Me Baby, was shortlisted for the Novel London Prize 2023. It's that we're talking about today. It's about a respectable family woman who shows her dark side, and it's described as a gripping psychological thriller. Welcome to the book show, Cara.
Oh, hello. I'm glad you have me here. It's so exciting.
It's lovely to have you with us. So, gosh, you've been teaching for 25 years now. That's amazing. You must have met some incredible people in that time.
Yeah, I've met some amount of people because for quite a while I was a burlesque and pole instructor as well. So So that was going on in the in the evening times, and I've been teaching 30 years now. So it's gone on long.
Yeah.
Time,
Fantastic. But how did you get into writing?
Well, I've always written. My mum was a great storyteller when we were young, and that's what she would have done at the fair, in the winter time, and that she would have made up poems and stories, and the count really encouraged us, and would have brought me home lots of books to read, far older than what I should have been reading, but she would have sellotaped all the parts of the book that I wasn't allowed to read. So, it kind of gave you that kind of, you wanted to read more. Why is she sellotaping those parts of the book? All of this here. So it kind of made me just so fascinated with books and all the stories in them. So I started writing as well because she was writing wee poems, and it was so much fun when we were growing up. I was writing poems as well. So I've been writing poems from very young, like from about 10 or 11. And then, on up getting, writing more and more. So I think that's where it started, just my mum's love of language and stories.
Yeah, nice. So let's talk about Don't Call Me Baby. It's a psychological thriller. What made you go down that road?
Well, I had quite a lot of traumatic events in my life, and I find that it's far easier to write about things like that than happy events. I think it's an Irish thing. We don't always write about the happy, funny stuff, even though we have real dark humour. So I kind of took these things that happened to me, and I began by writing things, out of just getting it off my chest. And then I decided, do you know what, I'm going to use all these and I'm going to turn them into a story and fictionalise it. So a lot of the things that are in the book, a lot of the things come from true events, but I've just created stories around them. So that's what gave me the idea for it, because I wanted to get something off my chest, started writing about it and thought, you know what, this is going to be the first chapter of a book. And that's where I started.
Yeah, great. Are you happy to talk about what happened to you?
Yeah. I was very young, maybe 17, and I was in experience with a boyfriend, and I was very holy at the time. I thought I was going on to be a nun because of all the Irish Catholicism, and was very, holy we were all very geared towards religion. So I was doing prayer meetings, but I had a boyfriend at the time, and he sexually assaulted me at the end of one of the meetings when we were clearing up, and that was my first sexual experience. And it kind of jarred, because back then he was my boyfriend, and you didn't tell anybody because you thought, well, that must be what happens.
Oh,
do you know? So it kind of came from that, and it was only years later when, you know, everything's coming out about violence against women and, you know, the Me Too movement and all of those things, that you realise, oh my God, this probably happens to more people, has happened to more women than we realise. And it was only during all that I realised how impacted I was by it, you know. So I just decided to take it and make it cathartic and get something out of it. So, and I feel I have got something out of it now. So
yeah. Oh wow, well done. I'm so sorry that happened to you.
No, well, you know, it's, you know, everybody, you know, we all go through all different experiences. So
yeah.
But there's lots of dark humour. It's not all about dark. Because we're Irish, we take all these situations and we change them into like comedic effect. So, you know, there's quite a lot of humour, you know, in it. And I think that's just an Irish thing, you know.
Yeah. So tell us about your characters in the book.
Well, the character in the book is, like you said, she's so plausible. So this terrible thing has happened to her. And before the thing has happened to her, she's trying really hard to be good, because there is something in her that makes her want to do bad things, even as a child. So her mother has been trying, obviously, to keep her good. And this one instance has just pushed her over the edge. She's just thought, right, I'm going to have to, this has changed me. I'm going to do something about it. She doesn't realise that at the time. It's just as different events unfold. So she sets out to get rid of some of the people who are tormenting women, who are tormenting, you know, who she comes along and they're just not nice people. So it's that idea that women are always told that we're extremely emotional and we can't control our feelings, but actually it's the other way around. Women are so good at being restrained. They think about all these things. I want to do this and I would love to get back, but we're so restrained and we're so, you know, held down by centuries before us, that I wanted to show that all of these things are in us. It's just that we're so much more evolved than men, and we don't let things get out of hand, you know. So I wanted to take that in and show that women, you know, the whole female perspective of getting your own back and doing these things can actually work and be funny in the middle of it as well, you know.
So she's out for revenge.
He's out for revenge and just helping people, you know, making the world a better place, I like to say, as she goes along, yeah. And you know, there's the relationships with her daughters as well as it, because the character is a principal in a school, and I kind of used all my experience in schools and things like that as well, you know, when I was drawing on the character, and, you know, Board of Governors meetings and different things like that. And I just wanted to make her so, you know, in with the clergy. So she's in with the priest, but yet at the same time, she's given him little bits of confessions, because confession's a big thing in our Catholicism over here. And I actually loved going to confession myself. So I wanted to bring those wee Catholic treats in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. So tell us about confession. You say you like doing it. You don't do it now then?
I don't do it now, but I actually haven't gone in a couple of years, but I used to love going to confession. It just made me feel so good. We were always made, you know, out, even when you're children, that we're sinners. Oh, we have to tell our sins. And this was like, it always made me feel good going to confession. I know lots of people hated it, but I used to come out of it going, yes, I'm free, I'm clean, you know, I can start again. It was more the giving you a clean sheet. Yes, I can say I'm sorry. And I can, you know, do whatever I want to do, slip in the odd bad word, you know, do things like that. And you still felt you could go and get, you know, you get penitence for it. So, you know, it was fine. It was just that those wee things that I liked about Catholicism. I'm not religious now. I don't want to be a nun anymore. And that's where I found out that maybe my calling to nunhood was my actual liking of nuns. So I kind of stepped back from the whole religious part of it.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So, with regards to the story, did you have a clear idea of it before you start? Did you plan it all out, or how did it work for you?
I knew where I was starting, and I had some ideas. Like, I've had ideas before I even started writing it, because I travel a lot. So there's a few places in it, London's in it, and Paris, which I just feel such an affinity with Paris. I go to Paris about 6 or 7 times a year, and I just feel that that's my soul place. So Paris is in it, and I got all my ideas from listening into people's conversations and looking in through people's windows. So, you listen into conversations, because I travelled alone a lot. So I would have heard, I would be sitting having a glass of wine and be trying to listen into conversations in the next table. You see people being irate, you see people being all lovey-dovey, and then I would make up little stories in my head around, go, that would be a really good story. I wonder where they're going now. Are they going home to fight? What has he done that's made her so mad? So all these little observations, kind of, even before I had put pen to paper, were floating around in my head. So I think I got a lot of ideas from that, and even from going out on evening walks. I really like evening walks, where, especially in the winter time when it's dark and people leave their lights on, and you can go along and just create wee pictures of what's going on in each house or each apartment, So I got all my ideas from normal everyday things, and from chatting to a lot of people, because I would have come across a lot of women through my dancing career. And every woman has a story to tell, and you realise then, the more you listen to people, how many different facets and how many things they are trying to control inside them. They might be smiling, but there's this whole, thing going on, like a storm going on in their lives. And I just find that really interesting. So I kind of wanted to bring that out in stories, that everything's not like it is. What you see is not always what's happening.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true, isn't it? People often think that their lives are quite dull compared to other people's, but it's just not true. Everyone has an interesting story to tell. You don't need to be a well-known celebrity to be interesting, at all.
No, it's just amazing. And the things that you pick up, the things that you pick up from other people, and just their experiences and that, and it's just so interesting. And I don't think that we do that enough. I think we're taken so much by, scrolling and, posting up pictures, that nobody, we don't talk as much, and we don't get to know people as much, or want to know people as much, because we're more taken by visual things now, I think.
Yeah.
So I think I got a lot of my ideas in that from just observations.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also, even if two people have been through a similar experience, how they deal with it and how they get out of that experience can be totally different. So it ends up being a completely different story in the end.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I think that's where my idea of Katie came. Like, Kate could have had a lovely life, just leaving everybody alone and not bothering with people, because she has a good job, she has a lovely family, and to the outset she has a lovely, a marriage, but her marriage obviously isn't a true marriage, so she's using it as a cover. But it's that she could have left it alone, but she chose not to.
Yeah.
But I've been to a couple of book clubs that have been using my book, and I was going, oh God, they'll probably hate that character, because she's quite, there's quite, you mightn't like her, but they do seem to like her, even though she does some terrible things. So I'm glad that there is that likability about her.
Yeah.
And I think because it's done in the first person, I find it easier to write in the first person, because you can get into the character a bit more, and you can explain more about what's going on in their head.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes you miss that. But so I find that really interesting, because I felt like I was becoming each character that you were trying to get into,
Yeah. And where does the title come from, Don't Call Me Baby?
Well, in the story, And a lot of it is drawn on my own experience. She is over in London and working in a club and by men. So it kind of stems from there, where she's given the name of Baby as her dance name, because everybody's given a dance name when they're going out, because she's the last one in and she is the baby of the group. And she likes that name, but as it comes along, when men were starting to call her Baby, and it's in particular her husband or whatever, so this is where it came from, that this was real. Don't call me Baby, because I'm not anybody's baby. Yeah. So, so it comes from that. It's even like I listen to going to coffee shops, and I was in one particular coffee shop, and the amount of men that come in and called the barista who was making them their coffees honey and love and baby, and you could see the girl getting more irate as the time went on, that wasn't her name, my name is whatever, and she told him it's their name. And the amount of people that just do it, and I got an idea of it from that as well, so just how annoying it is to be called this name that you don't want to be called.
Yeah. Well, if people want to get a copy of Don't Call Me Baby, it's out now. It's available on our website, tre.radio, and it's by Cara Finegan, who we've been chatting with today. Cara, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Hannah. It's been a pleasure.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now is Lisa K Friedman. She's an award-winning essayist, author and educator. She teaches creative writing at American University and mentors professional and beginning writers in their art of fiction. She's with us on the book show to talk about her latest novel, Hello Wife. It explores the devastating impact of opioid abuse on the families of those who are addicted. Welcome to the book show, Lisa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. So what made you tackle this very serious issue and subject for your latest novel?
My sister married an addict, and it was my first exposure to this disease, and I had no idea what to expect. And over time, it was tossing through my head, how could this happen? Because I think that, like probably a lot of people, I just assumed that addiction was not something that could touch me. That sounds so arrogant, but I think it's probably not uncommon. I thought addiction was the guy on the street with the raggedy hair who's picking at scabs and muttering to himself. And it turns out that that's not at all true. And so I wanted to share my experience because it was such a surprise.
Yeah, interesting. So did you presumably discuss it with your sister before doing the book?
I did. And what's funny is that, we only know our own perception, our own point of view. And from her point of view, she was so blissfully happy that she kept saying, you should write my story.
Wow, interesting. So can I ask what the situation is with your sister and her husband? Did he recover? Are they still together?
My sister passed 10 years ago exactly.
I'm so sorry.
I know, me too. Thank you. They would have still been together. She was one of those people who was absolutely determined to get what she wanted. And once she found him, my sister's husband, that's what she always wanted. And I think that that's hard for people it was hard for me to understand that that's what she wanted, because that's not what I would have wanted for her or for myself or for anybody that I know, because it's a horrid disease.
Mm. So tell us about the characters in your novel then.
The characters are sort of loosely based on her experience, but it's fiction. And the main character is a middle-aged woman who has run out of self-esteem. The story backtracks a little bit to show the readers how she got to this place. But at age 47, I think she is when the book starts, she's pretty run down and without hope. And when she meets her man, the new person in her life, she is out of her mind, tickled that this could happen, and that there was someone who understood her, who spoke her language, And in a way, a person with addiction has lost a lot of their self-esteem and self-confidence. And so the characters in the book are sort of a meeting of the minds. They are desperately in love with each other. And it's a story about how the rest of the world, and indeed how the family, responds to this exciting new adventure for her.
Yeah. So can you tell us a bit more about the addiction side of things with this character, what he's addicted to and how and why and his experiences?
I did a lot of research on this topic to make sure that my perception was sort of in alignment with reality, because that's a hard thing when it comes to addiction. So this man in the book, he's 52 years old and he's never been married. When he was 17, he had a car accident. And in the car accident, he was with his father. And in the accident, the father died. And so the mother has lost a husband. And her 17-year-old son has a back injury. And he's put on pain medication at the age of 17. Because she lost her husband, the mother is unable to support the son in any way, and years pass. In this character's history, his father worked as a salesman for a pharmaceutical company, and one of his age-old clients, a local family practitioner doctor, takes on the role of caretaker for the son, and he doesn't want the son to have pain. And so he continually prescribes pain medication, and this young man becomes addicted to morphine. And then you jump ahead 52 years later when he meets the main character, whose name is Charlotte. He's had an addiction of 35 or 40 years.
Wow. So presumably she doesn't know that when she meets him. He doesn't tell her.
No, she does not know that. But by the time they get married, she knows, and she's going to help him. And I think that's a really common position for many women. I'm going to help him. I'm going to change him. And that was what she expected to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing the series that was all about the Dope Sick, it was called, that was all about the Sackler family and the opioid epidemic and how it was sold, and really, really frightening, shocking stuff.
It's very shocking. And it's funny you mentioned that, because I was writing for Smithsonian at that time when the whole Sackler connection was exposed. And it was really a hard nerve for the magazine and for the people at the Smithsonian Institution, because what a horrible connection. So that was, again, another impetus for writing the book, that this was very much in my mind at the time at my work.
Yeah, very difficult. So did you spend quite a lot of time planning the book, and did you know where you wanted to take the characters and how you wanted the book to end before you started writing it?
I did not. Well, fiction is interesting. With fiction, my process with fiction is to create a character and then another character and then a place. And basically, I'm sort of following these people around to see what's going to happen to them. I had a sense midway through the book of the trajectory of each person, but I wasn't really sure. I like fiction that has a bit of a surprise in it, and that's the same for me as a writer. I like to be surprised to see what they're going to do. What I did in the years before I put my pen to paper, so to speak, was I spent a lot of time with addicts and their families. So I went to organizations like AA and NA, the organizations for the families, and I listened. And I spent some time at a methadone clinic. One of the things that I learned everything that I learned surprised me, because again, I don't know anything about addiction. But in the methadone clinic, one of the things that I learned was that there is no sympathy for addicts in the general community. They are really shunned and feared, and they're very much taboo. And the people in the methadone clinics are working so hard to kick their addictions, to recover, that the stigma of this disease really affects them in a strong way. So I wanted to put that into the life of my characters, that they are affected by how the community views addiction. And I like the way that the book just came out. And already I'm sort of an advocate for erasing the stigma that comes with addiction, and to maybe show how we can have some compassion and understanding for these people once we understand what it is that addiction means.
Yeah, how interesting. So you've kind of gone a little bit full circle from not understanding it and thinking, oh, it's not something that's going to come into my world, to now really being quite passionate about it.
And it's a surprise to me too. But I like this idea that you can create people who reflect something, maybe something that you know, maybe something that you're interested in. And then it spins into a world of its own. And one of the things that I'm really excited about doing is reaching out to anybody who has made a statement about addiction, whether it's a movie star or a sports figure. There are a lot of really brave people out there who have some experience with this disease, who, have the nerve to speak out. And I like to contact those people and thank them for what they're doing, because the more people who talk about it, the less fearful we are, the less condemning we are, and maybe more understanding, I hope.
Yeah. And for people suffering with addiction, they are extremely lucky if they have a supportive family or partner or friends, at least one person. I mean, better off, obviously, a group of people, but there are people going through this who don't have anyone, and that must be so much harder.
I think from what I heard from some of these people, it's terrifying, because they are really fighting for their lives. And the people that you would most likely lean on maybe are exhausted by this process.
Yeah.
Or, it's probably been going on for a long time. It's very hard to step away from addiction permanently. And I think people do get exhausted from being the support team of someone who's floundering. And that's very sad.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can, to a point, sort of understand why as well. If people are, people keep relapsing and I'm never going to do this again, I'm so sorry. And then they do it again. It must be very easy for the family or the support system to be like, what are you doing? Why do you keep doing this to yourself and to me? Like, this isn't fair.
Exactly. And also people run out of money.
Yeah.
And that's a very big deal. And I've made the characters in this book are not from money. And so money is dear to each and every one of them. And that means that it's larger than for people who have means. And that adds an additional pressure on everybody. Yeah. And at the end, we all just need to survive. So if someone is really damaging you or dragging you down, the instinct is to cut them off. And sadly, that's what happens a lot. And, this all sounds very sad and trying, but the book really isn't sad. It's a story of love between sisters. Charlotte has a sister named Celia, and she won't let her go ever, not until the next lifetime, if need be. So that is not the character's experience, that she is cut off from her family and from her support system. It's more about how everybody is circling around each other, like stumbling in the dark, not knowing what is happening and what is going to happen. And in some ways, it's amusing to see them do this.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult topic, but I like to talk about everything through the lens of humor, because I think humor makes everything go down easier.
Definitely. And where does the title come from, Hello, Wife?
The title comes from, that's one of the only thing that comes directly from my real life story of my sister. She wanted to be married. That was her goal. And when she did get married, she called him husband and he called her wife. When he came home, he would say, hello, wife. And in that way, they celebrated what they had, which is each other. And so I pulled the title right from her.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Well, if people want to get a copy of Hello Wife, it's available now on our website, tre.radio, and it's by Lisa K Friedman, who we've been chatting with today. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. Lovely to chat with you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now is Mark Batey. He grew up in Newcastle upon Tyne and worked as Chief Executive of Film Distributors Association before retiring to write and renovate. He's back with us on the book show because he's completed a trilogy of books focusing on the unsung heroes of the Victorian North East, with 2 new books on people who were born in Northumberland in the early 19th century, who went on to become national heroes of Victorian Britain with legacies that endure today. We have Josephine Butler's Great Crusade and The Secret Life of Father Time. Welcome to the book show, Mark.
Thank you very much for having me, Hannah.
It's great to have you with us. So we last spoke about Grace Darling, didn't we?
We did. Yes, that was, 2 or 3 years ago now, I think, when that book came out. That was my first published book, which was an exciting moment for me.
Yeah. So when you wrote about Grace, had you planned that you were going to do a trilogy, or did that come a bit later?
During the research for Grace, other names started coming up, and I was hoping to explore them later because I realized that I sort of didn't really know enough myself about some of these characters. And I was excited to have the opportunity to sort of look into their lives a little bit more and just tell their life stories, or a version of their life stories.
Yeah. So Josephine Butler was an incredible woman. She was a real crusader, wasn't she?
She absolutely was. And I'm sure historians and so on listening to your program will know about Josephine. She's commemorated in blue plaques and she's been on UK postage stamps and so on. I myself certainly didn't know enough about her. I knew the name. I didn't really know what she'd done. And you're right, she is absolutely extraordinary. And she does leave a lasting legacy. And arguably, she was an architect of modern social work.
Yeah. So tell people a bit more about what she did. She really improved young women's lives, didn't she?
Yeah, that was the thing. I think there were 2 things she was mainly involved with. One was raising the age of consent, which she raised from 12 or 13 at the time, which just seems deeply shocking to us now. And she got it up to 16, where it remains today. So 150 odd years later, that's part of what Josephine has bequeathed to us. The main thing she was involved with was repealing this dreadful set of laws, the Contagious Diseases Act. I think there was a set of 3 of them passed by the British Parliament in the 1860s. And the point of them was, as the name suggests, was to try to stop the spread of contagious diseases around garrison towns, which was becoming such a problem in that time, in the mid-19th century, that soldiers and sailors particularly were calling in sick, and there was a national security crisis. You know, there were so many bedridden sailors particularly that the Navy felt, well, we're under strength. So the legal response to this was to set up laws allowing any woman walking around one of these garrison towns to be stopped by the police and forcibly subjected to a medical check, an invasive sort of procedure in a hospital to determine whether she was carrying any infection. So, and really Josephine's point was that prostitutes were being used as kind of scapegoats, when really she pointed out that it was sailors coming back to Portsmouth and other garrison towns from overseas who were bringing infection with them. And her argument was, why are you not treating, I mean, it was way ahead of its time, why are you not treating men in the same way that you treat women? Why does this law only apply to local women? Why are you not also bringing men under the law equally? And she argued long and hard, and it took many years, but she did get those acts repealed. They were all withdrawn finally in Parliament and consigned to the sort of dustbin of history where they belong, really.
Yeah, amazing. And what about the other person, George Biddle Airy? This is The Secret Life of Father Time.
That's right. And Father Time is George Airy, as you say. George was born right at the turn of the century. I think it was 1801, I think it was, in a little market town in Northumberland called Alnwick, which is best known today for its amazing castle, which stood in for Hogwarts in the first of the Harry Potter movies about 25 years ago now, and has also been in Downton Abbey and lots of other productions. But it remains a bustling, thriving market town today, and George is commemorated by this blue plaque. So he was born there, spent his very early years there with his mum and dad, who didn't really have two pennies to rub together. And by the mid-1830s, so when George himself was in his mid-30s, he had become Astronomer Royal in Greenwich in London. And I sort of thought, well, how on earth did that happen? I mean, today, we're much more used to the idea that anybody can do anything, rightly so, so we sort of live in much more of a meritocracy, thank heavens. But back sort of 200 years ago, the idea that a little lad born into poverty in rural Northumberland could go on to become Astronomer Royal in Greenwich, I thought was a really remarkable achievement. And that was what I wanted to explore. When I realized that was what had happened, I thought, well, blimey, that has to be a life story worth looking into.
Yeah.
And George's main achievement as Astronomer Royal, he occupied the post for almost 50 years. So for a big chunk of the Victorian era, George was Astronomer Royal here down in London, and he created a sophisticated new telescope, which allowed him, through aligning stars and so on, it allowed him to redraw the line of the Greenwich meridian, which became the prime meridian. So it was George's line for where the Greenwich meridian was located that was adopted internationally. And that was the prime meridian that allowed the world to adopt a standard time. So, 12 o'clock in London became 1 o'clock in Paris and 2 o'clock in Istanbul, and so on and so forth, all the way around the world. And it took a while for all of that to happen, but it was George's prime meridian that for the first time became the basis of a world standard time. And for a little lad born in Alnwick, it is absolutely phenomenal what he achieved. Absolutely phenomenal. It's just amazing. And we still hear the pips on lots of radio news broadcasts today, don't we? And that is the Greenwich time signal. That is George's prime meridian.
Amazing that we don't know more about him. He should be incredibly famous, shouldn't he?
Well, I thought that. I mean, I'm sure there are people listening to your program who absolutely do know George, who stargazers and fans of astronomy and so on probably will know of George's life. But the reason why I called the book The Secret Life of Father Time was because I almost felt it was uncovering, for me anyway, it was uncovering secrets that my reaction to this was exactly yours, Hannah, that I felt I ought to know more about this guy and what he'd achieved and how he'd done it and the life that he'd led, a little bit more of the life that he'd led. And so that was why I called it Secret Life of Father Time, to try to, I literally felt I was uncovering secrets every step of the way.
Yeah, amazing. So how have you written the book? Because they're biographies, but they're kind of dramatized biographies written in more a novel-like form. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Rather like the Grace Darling book, which was the first in this little trilogy. I've tried to write them as as life stories, as narrative adventures, if you will. So we go through. They're not formal biographies, and of course, some of it has to be invented, as with any historical drama. But I've tried to keep to the sort of known facts as far as I possibly can. There's not too much, wild invention in them, but I've tried to tell them as life stories. So we follow Josephine and then George in separate books through their own life stories. So we, the reader, go with them as they progress.
Great. So now the trilogy is finished. What's next for you?
Well, I'd be open to. I'd have a little rest first, I think, but I'd be open to finding another sort of Victorian Northumbrian who's there are plenty of them, who've made significant marks in life. We've just recently this year celebrated 200 years of the railways, haven't we? And George Stephenson, who was born in the northeast of England, had a big part in creating engines and so on. So there are other potential candidates for an extension of the series, but I'm actually hoping that my next book will be something quite different. Perhaps something more contemporary that doesn't involve a lot of delving back into Victorian Britain.
Yeah, well, it's nice to have the option of what you want to do.
It is. In an ideal world, if I could sort of develop my writing career over future years, I would have two strands of books. One a contemporary strand of fiction adventures, and one is this ongoing series of historical fiction or life stories that are closely but not entirely modelled on real lives who achieved extraordinary things.
Great. Well, if people want to get a copy of Josephine Butler's Great Crusade or The Secret Life of Father Time, they'll be available on our website, TRE.radio, and by Mark Batey, who we've been chatting with today. Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Hannah. Lovely to talk to you.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Talk Radio Europe.
Your voice in Spain.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Welcome to the second part of tonight's book show. In the first hour, we were chatting with Cara Finegan, Lisa K Friedman and Mark Batey. In this hour, we're chatting to Melanie Blake, the internationally best-selling author behind the trilogy that began with Ruthless Women, which sold 250,000 copies in its first month, and its sequel, Guilty Women. Melanie's stories are exhilarating rollercoaster rides packed with all the glitz, glamour, passion and intrigue of the blockbuster novels of the 80s, yet reflective of the world we live in today. Vengeful Women is partly set on a private island off the coast of England, where 5 powerful women sit in jail awaiting trial for manslaughter. Also chatting to Robbie Steenhouse, who studied NLP and received both therapy and coaching. He founded NLP School in 2003 and is the author of several books on the subject. Bridging the divide between thriller and self-help, The Process is set at a therapy retreat on the North Devon coast, where 5 delegates have assembled to face up to their issues. We're chatting to Charles Harris, a best-selling author and award-winning filmmaker. He co-founded the first screenwriters workshop in the world, London Screenwriters Workshop, now known as Euroscript. His third novel, Play Me, is a comedy crime novel where celebrity rock meets an underworld of violent mobsters and unscrupulous politicians. And that is tonight's book show on Talk Radio Europe.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now is Melanie Blake. She's the internationally best-selling author behind the sensational trilogy that began with Ruthless Women, the Sunday Times bestseller that sold 250,000 copies in its first month, and its best-selling sequel, Guilty Women. She's also a successful playwright, having adapted her first novel, The Thunder Girls, into a play that broke box office records for a new work. Her stories are exhilarating roller coaster rides packed with all the glitz, glamour, passion and intrigue of the blockbuster novels of the 80s, yet reflective of the world we live in today. She's with us on the book show to talk about her latest novel, Vengeful Women. Welcome to the book show, Melanie.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, and what an intro.
Wow, what a successful career thus far.
Well, but what an intro. The reason I was saying that is because if anybody has got social media and has got my account anywhere near them, if you go to the top of X, which used to be Twitter, it has a post which I wrote when Ruthless Women sold 250,000 copies. It was actually in a week, not a month. It went insane. And the post, it says, I hope the teacher at school that told me when I said I wanted to be a writer, that the only writing that I'd ever do would be on the labels of the boxes of a factory that I worked in.
Oh my goodness.
Is reading this along with the rest of the 250,000 of you that are hashtag how you doing. Just shows you that, like, it's not, I'm not connected. I'm not even educated I didn't even go to college. The best books, and my books have been really successful, and thank you for that intro. But I'm not connected. I'm not from wealth. I'm not from a good family. I'm not from anything. A working class author is rare. It's like, so because they just don't want to know generally. Yeah. So it all started with The Thunder Girls, which is the one that was adapted into a play, which is devastating actually. And we're not going to go into that because it's a COVID story. But basically that opened, and it was just, it went crazy, and it was meant to tour all over the country, and it sold out and we had to shut it down. But the point is, that was the first book I wrote, and I wrote that book when I was 19. I didn't get published until I was 42.
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah, so it took me all that time, and then I finally got published at 42, and then I'm 49 now. So it's been 2.5 years since I had the last book out. To be honest, if you write these books, so I've just been declared, it's not actually a great declaration because it's a bit sad, but I'm officially the queen of the bunkbuster now because there's only me left because we've just lost Jilly Cooper. Yeah. And who, by the way, was really lovely because when Ruthless Women, which, as you mentioned, is the first in this trilogy, but I want to make it really clear, Vengeful Women, which is what we're talking about today, you don't have to have had the other two books to be able to read it, because when you open it, there's there's a character list and a chapter called Alive, Living and Dead, and Who's Who. That's really old fashioned in a way. They used to do that in the 80s. And I love that in a book, because it means you can pick something up without having to go backwards.
Yeah.
And also you write the books. As a writer, which still feels bizarre to even say that about myself, even though I've sold 1 million books now in 10 languages, if you're writing a series, because it was never meant to be a series, Ruthless Women was such a success that basically then I got bought out by a big publisher, and then they were like, no, this is the series. So I had to write the next one. And as soon as I started writing the next one, they said the only thing you've got to do is make sure that it appeals to someone who's never read the previous one. Well, that was mind-blowing. So I was like, how do I do that? And actually I learned, and it is actually, once you learn it, you've got it. And I did a radio show the other day, like you, and on it was a tribute to Jilly Cooper. So they had a lot of experts on, and of course I mentioned earlier about being working class, and they were all like, no offense to any listeners that are up there in the upper echelon, but basically they were all highfalutin guests. And basically the one before me was the professor of literature at Oxford. So I was ready thinking, oh my God. And she said, and she did this whole thing about this genre of books, which is called the bonkbuster genre. And when it initially died with Jackie Collins, when she died in 2015, and after that, nobody was releasing them because they just all assumed it was dead. And I didn't write Ruthless Women until 2021, and there'd been about 6 attempts by other authors, who I might add again, I sound terrible keep saying working class, but it is actually so relevant in the publishing industry. They are hideous to you if you're not posh. Literally, they're all posh, and they're all really, 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 they don't hide their disdain for the fact that you're not part of that group. So even when you're successful, they're rude to you. It's just a real class thing, which I hate. But the point is that when that book was a huge hit, the bonkbuster was officially declared back, and the Sunday Times, again, another posh paper, which, to be honest, I would never read, but it's great to have the credit because obviously that is a really, really credible title. And they said Melanie Blake is the new queen of the bonkbuster, but Jilly Cooper was still alive and she wasn't doing much. And I thought, that's a bit awkward. So, but funnily enough, the next day I got a handwritten note sent to me from Dame Jilly Cooper that said, "Welcome to the Bonking Club."
Oh, I love that.
How lovely is that?
I love that.
And since she's
and
died,
I have to say, I interviewed her a couple of times, and she sent me a handwritten note. So I had to say thank you, so I can totally relate. What a woman! Yeah.
She said so, and I was just going to say exactly what you just said. Since I have told my story of the fact she sent me that note, I've heard loads of other people tell those stories. So, and then she also said about me, which I didn't know, she had actually spoke about me quite a bit apparently, and she said she writes just like me, only ruder.
Oh, yay!
Yeah, which is quite a compliment because her books are pretty rude, and but it's like if you like crime, if you like thrillers, if you like soapy sort of Dynasty meets like Prime Suspect, that's how extreme it is. So like it might be the most glamorous setting in the books because they're all set on this private island called St. Augustine's Cove, which is actually in Jersey, so it's not actually set anywhere that far away, but it's something that was said to me when I wrote the first book, The Thunder Girls. A journalist said to me, if you want to have a big hit, don't set your book in London. And I thought, well, lots of British things do really well. He said, yeah, but in a book, international's better. So when I did the second book, and then he also said, and also you should write a bonkbuster. And I said, because there was no sex at all in Thunder Girls. It's about a girl group that get back together. And I said, why? And he said, well, one, you sound like Fiona Field in Carry On. Screaming, so your voice is perfect for it. 2, you're very glamorous, so if anyone wants to Google me, see whether you agree. But so I just put it out of my head, didn't think about it. And then it was only because COVID came around that I got locked in the house because I had a talent agency, which is what I was running, and that's what I was doing full time, looking after pretty much everybody that you saw on TV, Patsy Kensit, Beverly Collard, Gillian Telforth, Michelle Collins, everyone, all those TV divas, and basically they all worked on soaps. And so basically I had nothing to do during the first lockdown, and one of the actresses from EastEnders actually said to me, why didn't you write that book? And I said, which book? And she said, that dirty book, the one they told you to write, the bonkbuster. And I said, so I guess I could. So I wrote it, and I wrote it in 7 weeks, and it got turned down by 39 publishers, and eventually the 40th, which was a lovely little indie publisher that had never had a big hit before, took a chance on it, and it just exploded. And that brought the genre back. And now, of course, we've got Riders from Jilly Cooper. It's just been on TV, which has basically brought the genre in. In fact, the genre is exploding so much that I found it quite overwhelming, because after I'd written the first book in lockdown, that was a very extreme situation, because it's a bit like going to prison. I haven't been to prison, but like I was in a prison, because I was in my house. You weren't allowed, you couldn't go out and you couldn't go anywhere. And it was at the time when they made the rule as well, where people couldn't come in. I mean, when people look back in history at that period and what they had us doing and what they did, like, they will literally look back and go, "Is this a joke?"
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I mean, one of the things I always say is, it's like, I've been around and I've been in show business since 1996, which is when I got my break. I got a job at Top of the Pops, on the floor of Top of the Pops, basically holding wires. So again, total low entry, couldn't get any lower, and I was an extra on the soaps. And that is how I got into show business, and then I worked my way from that to the absolute top. I ran the biggest showbiz agency, so I literally was behind the scenes on all the soap operas, and then within a year I was actually upstairs in the network negotiating the contracts, so I was the agent of the soap opera stars. That's almost a book in itself, isn't it?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
and on the floor of Top of the Pops, I was basically like, talking to the acts, because that was the best time of my life ever. If anybody wants to find out about that, there's loads of it online. So it was back in 96, 97, 98. There was no mobile phone, the internet usage. There was no like camera phone stuff. There was no security. So Cher, Madonna, Whitney Houston, if they were in that day, you were going to be talking to them. And it was like unbelievable. It was the time of it would never happen. It would never ever happen now. It would never happen. No, weirdly, now I am someone. I get invited to things all the time. So I go to the BAFTAs, or I go to the National Television Awards, or I go to whatever it is, and everybody's surrounded with security all the time, everywhere. But back then in the early 90s, there was nobody there. And also that's what happened on the soap. So I was literally standing at the bar, supposedly not meant to talk, because you're not supposed to talk to the actors if you're an extra. And I got speaking to Beverly Collard, and we just got on really well. And then Claire King, who played Kim Tate on Emmerdale, we got on really, really well. And then Claire Richards from Steps, we got on really brilliantly. And I could go on. Gaynor Faye was on that list as well. There was just a little group of these actors and singers that I got on with really well. And they said to me, "You'd make a great agent and publicist," which I wasn't ever thinking of, because obviously I wanted to be a writer. I am now. But back then, nobody was interested. And I said, "Really? Who would hire me?" And they said, "We will." And they did. And I literally went on to then have this massive career where I was doing PR for Universal. So like I worked with George Clooney, Julia Roberts, Meryl Streep. I've had a really massively varied career, from, like, as I said, Beverly Collard, Liz McDonald, to Meryl Streep. I prefer Liz McDonald, love Meryl Streep. But, it's that, the point is I know these people. So if you read any of my books, you will totally believe that the characters are real. Because they are real. Because they're an amalgamation of everybody that I've ever worked with. And, I don't know whether we can say the word, so I'll just say it starts with a B and ends with an H. Mainly, that's what they are like. Yeah. Like 90% of them. So pretty much these books are full of wonderful B with an itches that you will love, that you will absolutely love, because their behavior is so outrageous. And then people who've said, as if anyone would behave like that in real life. Actually, they're based on 75% facts of things that I've seen. So I actually call it faction. Because it's actually real. I can't get into too much detail, because these books are obviously adult books, and they are 18 18 plus, definitely. Even those sections in it, and I'm being careful as to how I describe this, they are true stories that I either saw myself or witnessed or whatever. There's a famous scene in one of them, which is a let's call it a romantic scene. There's not a lot of romance in it, and it involves a famous actress and in the book and a young driver, about half her age, and basically something happening in the middle of the road. And basically that happened outside my house.
Oh my God.
So literally all the backstabbing, the skullduggery, the blackmail, it's all true. It's literally all true. I mean, don't want to get dark, but all the Diddy stuff that's out there at the moment, that is the plot that was in my book, which was in the last one, because I've known about all that for years. In London, which is where I'm based now, although I am actually from the north, they've recently done a lot of press on the Mohammed or Fayed stuff, all those allegations. Well, we know that, because obviously I worked in media, we knew that 15 years ago. You'd say, I often spend most of my days seeing things as if they're new and thinking it's just the most disgusting, hypocritical place, because you all knew. It's just like De Savile and just like loads of the others, and they're taking people off air a lot quicker now than they used to. But television is pretty sick.
Yeah.
So I'm being genuinely serious, and this is someone who has been in it for 25 years. I've never done anything else. And I have seen it all. I've seen the most cruel of cruel, and I've seen the most vicious of vicious, and I've also seen the most amazing. So you go from one hand, you've got Stephanie Beecham from Dynasty choosing me from a council estate who literally didn't have any education or anything to represent her across the world.
Amazing.
So that kindness, and I found that the higher up they were, as in, if you're going into Coronation Street, I mean, Corey's not very big these days, but if you're going into Coronation Street back then, the main star would be whoever's got the pub, really. Right. And so I had Bev. I still have her now, even though I'm mainly a writer. I still help out 5 of the core girls. And she actually did an interview for this book, because the whole series opens on the fact that the soap opera that this show is based on, because they say write about what you know. So that's what I do. I only write about what I know. So the first book was about a girl group reuniting and about how much they all hate each other, because that is what I saw at Top of the Pops, that every single band that you see going, hey, yeah, we're so glad we're back to this tour. As soon as the cameras are off, I get away from me, literally, and they hate each other. And basically, so that's what I wrote about. It's a really good book. It's actually being re-released soon, so people will be able to find it online. And in television, the sort of theme of this is that the soap opera is going to be cancelled, and it's all everybody's in it lives on the island, and therefore if the show gets cancelled, then they'll have to leave the island. So they'll do anything to keep the show alive, and the show should stay alive. But there's one guy who is basically the network controller, which is what happens nearly everywhere, who basically has decided that it's finished and past it, and the women are old and they're in their 40s and 50s. So there's an opening speech in one of the books where the casting director talks about how to revive the show. We're going to bring in a Joan Collins type there when Dynasty did it. It's all written within the book. It all makes sense. And he's basically saying, oh, no, well, okay, maybe. All right, then that sounds like a good idea. But she better be she can't be old. She better not be anything more than 25. And the casting director says, but no, she has to be 50 plus. And And he goes, 50? Like, you telling me this is a sexy part? This is all part of the storyline. And he goes, 50? Don't give me mutton when you've said I can have lamb. And that line, she actually heard herself from a producer when she was like 25. Oh. And then another line that she was in Coronation Street in a green room, again, when she was in her 20s. And they were watching, because they used to watch the episodes inside being filmed live, and not obviously for the public, but in the green room. And there was a romantic scene going on between one of the main characters, who was about 51, and her partner, and a male executive walked past and said, "Ooh, condemned meat."
Oh, that's how
that's how these women are spoken about, and that is why these women are so tough in real life and also in this book. So they have to deal with all these enemies, and it's just, if you read any of the reviews, all the reviews always say suspend your belief and join this world. And literally just let it go and take you on a journey. Like, just put everything out of the window and just go on it. And people who do that journey, it gets. I mean, as I said, we've now sold 1 million copies in 10 languages of a book that's set on an ailing soap opera, which is, as we know now, the truth. Soaps are ailing. Neighbours is gone. There's hardly anything left, and nobody's really watching the mainstream shows. I mean, 2.1 million is quite, if you think of the days of 25, 30 million, it's shocking how low they are. So I think we're probably about 5 years away from losing soaps altogether. So everything that's in the books it's been zeitgeisty, but also everything that's in the books is very dark. So there's murders, there's stalkers, there's huge, massive, like, blockbuster moments. This one, Vengeful Women, which is actually my favourite, and was the hardest to write. Because I knew it was the last one. So I wanted it to be the best. And it has so my books are written in 4 parts so that it feels like you've opened it and it's meant to be like a mini series in a book. It's all very specific. Basically everything I do is like pointedly different to what's been done before. So I created something that's now called a binge read. If you've heard that term, you will have heard it because this is what you do. But like, some people won't have heard it. That term didn't exist before I wrote Ruthless Women, because people actually read it in 24 hours because, of course, we were in COVID, and 24 hours and 48 hours. And then they binge read it. So then it became a binge read. And then basically, so now my books, whenever anyone gets them, they're like, oh my God, right, I'm saving this until the weekend. And then they'll read them over 48 hours, like you do with the box set. And each section is sectioned into part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. So again, you feel like you're in a movie. And also what's really interesting about the books for the reader who's listening and might consider reading any of them is that my books are always set over just 4 months, which is something that I always do so that the pace is very fast. And you're not having to wait around for anything to kick off. It opens like a blast and it continues right to the very end.
Well, if people want to read it, they should definitely pick up a copy of Vengeful Women. It's out now. It's available on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Melanie Blake, who we've been chatting with. Melanie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I hope if anyone reads it and they like it, come and tell me on social media.
Hello, little Alan Bennett here. If I'm not writing books, then the thing I like most is listening to the book club on Talk Radio Europe. Fancy.
Joining us on the line now is Robbie Steenhouse, who studied NLP and received both therapy and coaching. He founded NLP School in 2003 and is the author of several books, including How to Coach with NLP. Robbie also teaches internationally and runs the transformative NLP sessions for both individuals, groups and organisations. He's with us on the Book Show to talk about his novel, The Process. It's set in a therapy retreat on the North Devon coast, and it bridges the divide between thriller and self-help. It's about 5 delegates who have assembled to face up to their issues. Welcome to the Book Show, Robbie.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Much appreciated.
Oh, it's great to have you with us. And what a lovely idea for a book. Explain the background behind it.
Yes, well, I've written, about half a dozen sort of self-help books over the past 20 years, and I kind of like the genre, but they tend to be, I don't know, I have a feeling that it's slightly hard going, not much fun. Personally, I like fiction. I love the author John Connolly and enjoy reading his Charlie Parker series. So it kind of came upon me during the lockdown. Wouldn't it be nice if you could actually have like a page-turning novel that sort of had embedded in it some of the kind of tricks and healing processes I've learned writing self-help. So that really was the original thought.
Yeah, great idea. And are you pleased with it? How did you find the process of writing it?
Well, as it was my first novel, it was fairly difficult because I think Stephen King said to write is human, to edit is divine. And I think I spent years editing it until finally I actually brought in a bit of help from some other authors and editors and so on to finally get it refined. So I think it was quite difficult to turn it from something which was a kind of big chunky book, which was kind of difficult to read, into something that finally worked. Yeah, difficult.
So tell us about your therapist in the story, Louise. She's kind of loosely based on your first therapist.
That's right, yeah. So I had an American therapist called Lois, so Louise. They were both American, slightly different backgrounds, but I just sort of kind of like the idea of kind of, she died in 2019, just before the lockdown. So I thought I'd like to sort of somehow dedicate the book to her because she was such a kind of important force in my life. And so I came up with the character Louise. She's kind of an American woman. Her mother was African American. Her father is unknown, and the book will kind of reveal that. I don't know, she kind of raised from poor roots and then sort of found her way as a sort of very determined character who became a qualified therapist, and then found her way to Devon, where she runs the UK franchise of The Process, run by its founder,
Yeah, and you also, there's a kind of second string to the book where you talk about the guy who created The Process, Jacob, because he goes back a long way.
Yes, I mean, so the kind of Jacob character was someone I kind of invented a bit later on and weaved it into the book to make it a bit more kind of dynamic. He was sort of a business person who was looking for some sense of purpose. And really, he's also the kind of other protagonist, and hopefully gives a little bit of dramatic tension because he's had some slightly shady past. But that kind of comes out later in the book. But yeah, his life is spread over 80 years, and he was based in Northern California in the 1970s, which was a sort of heyday of therapy with people like Eric Byrne, who created transactional analysis, parent and adult and child model, and also a bit later on NLP and various other influences. So the idea was that he had the therapy journey people would dream of having, being, receiving therapy from some of the great therapists of history. And he creates this process, but he also has a fast food business background. So like me, I have a background in business, and I also like process. I have no background in fast food. I know a little bit about how McDonald's operates. So I thought the idea was that he would take his capability of developing an international business using a fast food process and then create a similar franchise thing with this therapy retreat.
Yeah, interesting. And was the character of Jacob sort of loosely based or inspired by a godparent of yours?
Indeed. So I had a godparent who lived in Newcastle, and he was from Austria. He was a survivor, and he left Austria. He was Jewish. His family were all killed, but he managed to get to Britain in the 1930s, originally interned as a foreign alien or whatever, but he joined the British Army, became a major. But what was interesting about him was he wasn't particularly interested in that part of his background, his identity originally. He was very Germanic. He liked skiing and sausages, and he just really seemed like kind of a German person who felt, that way. So I wanted to kind of convey that kind of background, and that's sort of how I picked him. But he had absolutely nothing to do with therapy, so that was a kind of more of an influence, if you like.
So regarding the process, is it all something you came up with for the story, or is it using a lot of techniques that you would use as a therapist?
Well, I mean, I suppose what I wanted to do is there are other kind of process type therapy retreats, but they have their own unique kind of techniques and methods. So I've created all of the methods in the process, but I've been influenced by these other things such as scripts and transactional analysis. That's probably the key theme of it, is the idea that somebody might have a double bind, sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't. So a double bind typically for people is if you work hard, you'll be alone. If you don't work hard, you'll be worthless. So that's kind of, in some senses, one of the things that I've created as a negative double bind, and saying, okay, if that's your negative double bind, what can you do, or what process can you do to shift in a way that it doesn't undermine your identity? So that's kind of the therapeutic basis, if you like, of the book. So it's more my material, but obviously I, stand on the shoulder of giants. So I didn't create it entirely, out of the blue.
Yeah. And what about the characters, the people who are at the retreat getting the therapy? Can you tell us about them?
Sure. Well, I mean, there's 5 of them. I can go into some detail, but I mean, as a sort of summary of the 5, I think that what I've noticed is that people come along to therapy or NLP or personal development type courses, and when they arrive, they often have very specific issues which they think are unique to them. But if I say that one person has got an issue regarding feeling alone, or has a problem regarding their career, or getting into relationships or something like that, these are kind of universal issues. So what I wanted to do was create 5 characters who had 5 different issues, but often I would hope a reader would be able to strongly identify with 1 or 2 of them. So that's the kind of idea behind it. Also, I've been running these type of courses now for about 25 years. So there are sort of certain types of people who show up. And although it's a bit of a generalization, one of the characters, for example, was an executive, a lawyer, very kind of powerful character, very difficult in some ways. And although I've had quite a few people like that on my course, I've kind of, literature, you tend to exaggerate it a bit, so he becomes more difficult than people would normally, although he does find his way in his transformation. So that's one of them, called David.
Yeah. So is the idea that people will read the book and obviously enjoy the story, but also potentially get a bit of help, ideally, from it themselves if they're going through similar issues with relationships or grief or their work or whatever?
Absolutely. And I mean, it's been out now for a couple of months, so I've had quite a bit of feedback already from the people who bought the book, or there's an audio book as well. Brilliant reading by an actress called Jill Mills. So listening to it or reading it or whatever, people have said exactly that they kind of read the book. So many people have come up to me and said, I've really been thinking about what's my double bind. So that's exactly was my intention of writing the book, was that a reader would be able to get it and have that kind of vicarious healing, if you like, while enjoying the process of reading it, finding it fun and not hard going.
Yeah. And do you think your years of coaching and teaching has taught you a bit about storytelling? I know you said it was your first novel. Has one helped the other a bit? Or?
That's a good question. I mean, I think in some senses I've always liked telling stories. I think I come from a sort of family who liked, going out to restaurants and telling stories about their own past, or often repetitive stories. So I think I come from a slightly storytelling culture in my kind of family background. But no, I don't have a background, as a storyteller per se. My self-help books did have a narrative structure. So the idea of, developing a structure in a way that can help someone gradually increase their skills over the course of the book, and there's an actual plot for them to do so, is something that came naturally. But no, it was a bit of a surprise that I just sort of somehow found it. I mean, one of the things that I did quite a bit of research and learned how to write. And one of the tips I got was create the characters, start writing, and hopefully they will just come alive and talk through you. And although that sounded a bit strange, it actually worked. I just found that I could just get into a character and I just write. It was as if somebody else was doing the writing. Mm-hmm. So it was quite convenient, even if it sounds a bit strange.
No, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of authors talk about that, and they like you feel like it's such a weird thing. But no matter how much planning you do, if you did do a lot of planning, the characters do just take over.
Absolutely. And I mean, I suppose also I've had so much experience of running these courses, over so many different cultures as well. I've traveled all over the world to do these courses, and I've met people from different backgrounds and so forth. So there was something, it was quite easy for me to write a narrative between, if you like, a therapist and their client, or more realistically, the way I do it is I would invite someone up on stage and do something with them and explain it while I'm doing it. So that was something I was so used to doing that it just seemed a very easy thing to do. And again, I've heard hundreds of stories, some of them amazing stories. I remember once there was a lady in China when I was doing this in Shanghai, and I mean, her story was just incredible. I mean, it sounded like Gone with the Wind. After, I don't know, doing these sort of things, in the UK, where often people's lives are a bit more straightforward. I went to school, I went to university, I got a job, I got married. I mean, this was like, wow, much, much more dramatic. So I mean, I've heard a lot of stories, so I think maybe that kind of fed into it.
Yeah. So now the process is out. Has it made you want to write more? Could there be a sequel?
Well, I mean, it certainly could be a sequel. I'd go as far as to say that it kind of depends how it's received. If I haven't done it with a sequel in mind. I certainly would like to write some more non-fiction, but I don't know if people are dying to find out what happens to the characters. I would be there to serve my readers and happily write a sequel.
Well, in the meantime, if listeners want to get a copy of The Process, it's out now. It's available on our website, TRE.radio, and it's by Robbie Steenhouse, who we've been chatting with. Robbie, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Hannah, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
The Book Programme, presented by Hannah Murray.
Joining us on the line now is Charles Harris. He's a best-selling author, award-winning filmmaker and journalist. He co-founded the first screenwriters workshop in the world, London Screenwriters Workshop, which is now Euroscript. He's with us on the book show to talk about his third novel, Play Me. It's a comedy crime novel with a twisty plot and unlikely heroes. Celebrity rock meets an underworld of violent mobsters and unscrupulous politicians. Charles likes to give his novels a political edge and go undercover to research them. For Play Me, he worked with SAS veterans, journalists researching high-profile assassinations, and charity workers dealing with international corruption. Welcome to the book show, Charles.
Thank you. Hi. Good to speak to you.
It's great to have you with us. What an exciting life it sounds like you lead, speaking to all these interesting people.
Yes. I mean, one thing you did say, I think you said violent monsters. I think it's violent mobsters. It should be.
Oh, sorry. I should have said mobsters. Yeah. That's what I meant. Sorry.
Gangsters. Yes. No, I don't do monsters, but they are monsters in a different way.
Yes, quite. So tell us how this book came about.
It came about, I was thinking about, I mean, the problems in the world are so big and we are so small. And I thought of a character, a hapless British rocker he's kind of too stupid to realise that he can't solve the problems of the world. So he sets out. Basically, he's had a one and a half hit career. He had a couple of big hits, 1.5 hits a long time ago, and he's been drifting, surviving basically on those ever since. And he wants to try and revive his career and do something important in the world. So he agrees to front a charity concert in the Caribbean, not realizing it's a scam run by mobsters and gangsters. Goes off to the Caribbean and gets tangled in a lethal plot. He walks in on the president of the island being assassinated, and is framed for it and has to go on the run. He's one of these characters I love, which is a kind of like a cork. He keeps bobbing to, you push him down, he keeps bobbing up. Whatever happens, we throw everything at him, and he keeps bobbing to the surface.
Mm-hmm. And do you spend quite a while planning out your characters? Did you kind of have lists as to the kind of person that he is?
I don't so much have lists. I mean, this took a long time. I first thought of this many, many years ago, but I didn't really have him as a character, and I needed him to make it work. And he came to me fairly well formed, as a kind of, like I say, a rather hapless, not very bright rock star who is very much tied up in his own ego, and yet keeps getting things wrong. And I found him, I like comedy. I like satire. I like things going wrong, and we laugh, but at the same time, we kind of want him to succeed.
Yeah, so people are on his side.
People are very much on his side, however foolish he is.
And what about the plot? Do you spend quite a lot of time planning that out before you start writing, or?
A fair amount of time. Things tend to sort of fall into place, and then things fall out of place, and you have to kind of reorganize things. It's really like childbirth, in that the pains tend to, as I'm told, tend to disappear in your memory to a certain extent, and a lot of the pain of sorting out the plot, and it can be painful when something doesn't work and you think, oh my God, this isn't going to work. And you just live with it and sit with it until, and sometimes the characters give you answers, and sometimes you find you walking around a park or in the shower and an answer comes to you. And it falls into place. And that's the most wonderful feeling.
Yeah. So tell us about the research that you did, the work with the SAS veterans. What kind of information did you get from them?
Well, the SAS veteran who actually, I teach an Aikido club. It's a martial art. And one guy had come to me, and he had been in the army, he'd been a mercenary. And he actually said after a few years that if he hadn't done Aikido, he probably would have either killed himself or killed somebody. His work had been so awful. And I kind of went back to him and said, look, tell me about some of this awful work, because my guy gets tied up with rebels in this Caribbean island of Bencuda. It's an invented island. But I want it to be real. I wanted some of this awfulness to be part of the story, because I think the best comedies have a serious side to them. And there is violence. I mean, my guy, his stage act is kind of like a mock violent stage act, and then he has to basically deal with real violent people, real mobsters, as you said, real gangsters, a real conspiracy, and real rebels. And I wanted the guns to be real. I wanted the background to be real, and he was enormously helpful in dealing with that. Told me he even helped me to make sure I had the right gun on the cover.
Great. And what about the journalists you spoke to?
Journalists was more for my first book.
Okay.
My first book, The Breaking of Leon Glass, is a satire on tabloid journalism, and I've always also, I think, sort of the best comedy, like I say, comes from reality, and my horror at what some of the tabloid newspapers were doing. I mean, I have a great respect for tabloids. Some of them have done some really good campaigns, and some of them have been really awful, as we've seen recently in the hacking conspiracy that went on.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to deal with some of this. I wanted to show this, and again, through a journalist who himself is also rather, sort of not as clever as he'd like to think he is, but he wants to try and break into tabloid journalism and thinks he's found a scoop. But in the process of doing the scoop, he has to tell a little lie, has to sex it up a little bit, and one lie leads to another until he's embroiled in this tangle of lies, which could lead to the death of a young teenager. And again, I wanted to make it real. So I managed to inveigle my way in secretly into some tabloid editing, tabloid newsrooms, with the help of a few friends, undercover, as it were.
Oh, great.
And it's amazing. It's amazing what really goes on.
That you're not going to tell us.
But you read the book, Breaking of Liam Glass. It's all in there.
Yeah. And do you think of doing trilogies? Do you want to make any of these into a series, or are they all standalones with new characters?
I think it's a really good question, that, because Breaking of Liam Glass, I can't see. It's possible I could go on with a journalist character. He's, without giving too much away about the ending. He might survive, he might not, we're not too sure. Play Me, I don't think that Axeman has another story in him, but you never know. He goes out to do the concert, and maybe he'll get around to doing the concert one day. But I am actually developing a spy novel, which I hope will be a series set in occupied France in 1944.
Okay.
And that I'm looking forward to getting down as soon as I've got all this publicity on Play Me out of the way. I really want to get around to doing that, because I think that's going to be quite exciting.
And what made you look back in time, do a historical novel then?
I look back because I realised that the second half of the 1940s is so important, and yet we very rarely deal with it. Most books deal with the war, understandably, because it's a great subject. And then you jump to kind of 1950s, and we talk about, all the films and books throughout the 1950s. There's not much about the second half of the 1940s, 45 to 50. And yet, so much of what we do in life, in our certainly in Britain and to the rest of the world, was set up then. The United Nations, much of the European Union, the welfare state in Britain, the NHS, so much of what is part of our lives now was created in the second half of the 1940s. So I really want to look at that, but I want to do it through an interesting lens of this spy who's dealing with, the Cold War. Again, that started around then. The CIA was developed then. MI6 started before, but really became what it is now during the late 1940s. And I thought it would be a really interesting place to explore.
Yeah, definitely. So is it difficult to drag yourself out of the writing, the research and write it all down?
Research is it's strange. Research is always fun. There's always a kind of hesitation for doing research. I don't know, because it's hard work. And then you get stuck into it, and it is easy to get down rabbit holes. And I've got an enormous pile of books, some of which you can see behind me, which I really must get into. But at the same time, there's always a desire to get those words on the page. And the character starts to nag at you. I find, I'll be lying in bed and he's saying, come on, time to start writing me now.
Nice to be tackling a period of history that you don't feel there's been an awful lot written about, though. As you say, the war, there's endless amounts of books set in the Second World War. But to write in a period of history where there isn't as much information must be quite exciting.
And it's fascinating. I mean, some of the things that went on, that developed and came out after the war and basically set up the 1950s and created the 50s and the kind of the world, as I say, the world as we now know it. It is absolutely fascinating.
Well, for the meantime, if people want to get a copy of Play Me, it's available on our website, tre.radio, and it's by Charles Harris, who we've been chatting to. Charles, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And can I just give one more link? If you go to my webpage, people can download a free book of short stories.
Ah, nice. Yes. And what's your website?
Charles, if you go to charles-harris.co.uk, or if you search for Charles Harris author, I'm the one who doesn't play for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Perfect.
And you get a free set of short stories.
Great stuff. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Hannah.
The Book Programme. Presented by Hannah Murray.
The TRE Bookshow is sponsored by audible.co.uk. Download one title each month, plus unlimited listening to thousands of Audible originals, podcasts and audiobooks. Just click on the Audible banner at www.tre.radio.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this programme, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit tre.radio.